minions, welcome to Crank It Up. This is the postmortem for Game 18, Mythic Horse Sheep versus Ancient Egyptian Luchadors. I had superhero princesses winning this matchup, and clearly they aren't playing because of the surprise upset of my dark horse candidate, Ancient Egyptian Luchadors, or the Luch-Egyptians, as they've since been coined. I can't take credit for that, by the way. So, Luch-Egyptians, they are a fantastic combination, and I want them to go very far, and I'm so thrilled that they're going to be advancing to round 3. Curiously, before the seeding was readjusted, there was a really good chance that these two teams were going to play each other in round 1. When you think about it, they were the 8 seed for the Mythic Horse Sheep, and Superhero Princesses were the 9 seed. If they were to move around, then if we're going to swap Superhero Princesses and Mythic Horse Sheep, something we thought about doing, and Ancient Egyptian Luchadors actually stayed where they were, then they would have faced each other in round 1. And if that happened, I was prepared to bet on the Luch-Egyptians to win this matchup because I really like them going up against Mythic Horse Sheep for a number of reasons. Now, something that you may not be familiar with is that this was a very difficult rules decision that we had to research thoroughly before the game actually happened. And we did this before round 1 because we thought it was actually going to happen in round 1. And that is, what happens when you play Hello Dolly to copy a self-burying card? This is one of those rules questions that you need to know the answer to going in because you can build entire strategies around it. Do I need to worry about Hello Dolly at all? Will it work? If it does work, then I'm going to know that going in, and I'm going to save Hello Dolly for specific cards. If I know that it doesn't work, then I don't need to consider those cards, and I need to figure out what else am I going to copy instead. And if you saw the game log, you know that Hello Dolly has a very interesting interaction with Reversal, and Hello Dolly actually stole something back after a Reversal because the setup card wasn't destroyed. So, what is our official answer? And by official, I mean that we thought about this very seriously. We checked this with a number of people that we thought would know the answer to, and we all arrived at the same conclusion. This is how we played. This is what the players agreed to. If it turns out to be incorrect, then one, I would argue with why ever that is incorrect because I think we have a good precedent for it. And two, again, when we agree upon the rules, that's what we're working for. And if all players agree, then, I believe that's considered to be fair. So what did we rule? We ruled that Hello Dolly is effectively meaningless against a self-burying card. I'm going to use Blessing of Anubis as example. Now, there's some confusion over how Hello Dolly actually works. Hello Dolly does not copy the ability. It copies the text of the card without requiring the prerequisite for the card. Now, that is incredibly confusing, and people have questioned in the past, what exactly is a prerequisite for a card? For example, Shady Deal, does it have a prerequisite for the card? No, it doesn't. Make Contact does, because Make Contact specifies that you can only play the card if it's your last card in your hand. Shady Deal doesn't have that clarification. It just says as part of the ability, if you have, 2 or fewer cards in your hand, then you're going to gain a victory point. So it's very awkward, the difference between what is a prerequisite and what isn't. Now, self-burying cards, do they have a prerequisite? The answer is no, in our opinion. You might see a wording like, bury this card, special. When this card is uncovered, each of your minions here gains +2 power, like Blessing of Anubis. Let's break this down step by step. Because there's 2 things you need to consider. What happens when Hello Dolly is played as the card is being buried, and what happens when it is played when the card is being uncovered. Let's do the self-burying example in the first place. And it's worth noting that if Hello Dolly were to copy a standard action that just happened to be buried, it'd work perfectly fine. That's legitimate. If you bury, like, just going to pick Senor Mucho Slam versus the Monsters, for example, and you uncover that, Hello Dolly can copy that, no problem. But Blessing of Anubis. Well, Hello Dolly would acquire the text of Blessing of Anubis. And the first thing it would do is it would bury itself, and then it would be done. Now, there's a rule that states that when a card is uncovered, it cannot immediately be reburied. This is important because the card is played once it's uncovered. So a card that buries itself, like Blessing of Anubis, the first thing it would do would say bury this card. And if you did that, then it would just be a loop that does nothing, and the card would continually bury and uncover itself on successive turns and never amount to anything. So what does that rule mean for Hello Dolly? Well, we felt that it means that when you acquire the text of the card, you acquire the text of the card, and you do what it says. So if you bury a card and Hello Dolly were to copy it, it would bury itself. And then you could uncover Hello Dolly at the start of your turn. If you were to uncover a card like Blessing of Anubis, and then you play Hello Dolly at that moment, it still acquires the card text. Blessing of Anubis doesn't lose its card text, it just means that it no longer applies. Well, when you play Hello Dolly to copy it, it would acquire the card text. Hello Dolly was not buried, so therefore it would bury itself immediately. Now the million-dollar question. When the card is uncovered, does Hello Dolly retain the status of what it copied? And based on other precedents, we ruled that the answer was no, that Hello Dolly would try to play itself as if it was from the hand, which would mean that you would play it with its ability intact, and it would just say special, play after another card is played, and it would do nothing because it doesn't remember what it copied. Now, the precedent that we used in order to determine that is ironically a mummy. There was a precedent that if you take control of a mummy with Muffin, and then mummy buries itself, does mummy remember that the loss of control is only temporary? And it was ruled that the answer is no. In other words, if you were to play a Muffin to take control of a mummy and that base scores, then mummy would bury itself and it would play itself, and you would have full control over the mummy because it doesn't remember that it was temporary. And so it wasn't hard for us to extrapolate from that self-burying actions would be useless for Hello Dolly. And again, everybody agreed to that. This is something that amazingly was never considered. I checked the archives for both the Sheep playtesting and the Oops playtesting, and it never came up. And it's one of the reasons why I don't like Hello Dolly, because it creates these really weird, interesting questions. And just because, in case people get upset about this, I even checked with people that I trust who weren't even playing in the match. And, they had no idea that these two teams would even be facing. So I think that, we did our due diligence, and I'm happy with the result. And if Smash Up were to actually come back and say that, you ruled incorrectly, I would argue profusely, point to the precedents that we already have, and then we'd have a continued discussion. So I'm very confident in the approach and in the result. But as I mentioned, I like to be transparent, and it's important for people that if they played this matchup, that they know that that's how we ruled things and that they should rule things similarly. Now for the actual matchup, even despite all that, I like Ancient Egyptian Luchadors against Mythic Horse Sheep for a number of reasons. Tomb Trap is incredibly powerful. Mythic Horse Sheep derive a lot of power from their fours, which really want to be out for a long time. Black Sheep, as strange as it is to say, is a bit of an engine minion and a moving target. Tomb Trap can take care of that. Rainbow is a very good source of card draw for this team. Tomb Trap can kill it. Ram can be very annoying, particularly for removing the mummies that will stay in play. Tomb Trap can take care of that. It requires a little bit of guessing as to where you think they're actually going to go, but at the same time, you can use Tomb Trap as a bit of area control because it means that they can't go to the base where it buries. Of course, you could always use Tomb Trap to bury itself on one play, and then have Pyramid Engineer immediately uncover it to kill it instantly, and that totally works. But I also like the Ram because the Ram is a terminal play that is usually used in breaking a base, and it makes for a very good setup target. That makes it a very good reversal target. You also have Caparoja, who is incredibly powerful against this team because of encouragement power. Given the way that Mythic Horse Sheep usually play, it's not uncommon to play a low minion and then play encouragement power on it because you want to minimize the amount of power creep that you add. Then, as you do a C-Star and or a Starlight or move your minions with your sheep actions, the power will rack it up quickly and you seeded very little, but you played encouragement power in advance because you might need that action to play something else like a movement card. That obviously is normally very powerful, but what it means is that you can position Caparoja to kill the minion who would be 5 or 6 because Caparoja destroys a printed power of 3. It could take out a Pinky, it could take out a C-Star, any one of these easy encouragement power targets. And if they were to lead with a bigger encouragement power target, then that's your reversal target right there. Mythic Horse Sheep, they do have they have one action destruction card in Freedom Power, but it is so easy to recur your setup cards, especially quick setup, which can be used to instantly destroy someone, or be used as part of a baking the base play, especially if you plan to reversal it that turn. There's a lot of things that they can do. This team, Mythic Horse Sheep, draws a lot of power from minion quantity. That makes Plague of Locusts very powerful. Of course, that's a very good Hello Dolly target because it can try and reduce the power, but they don't necessarily need minion quantity in order to win a base. They can use other buffs. They can use Flora Loca to become very powerful, who can be a 5. They can build a singularly powerful minion with Priest of Anubis. They don't necessarily need the minion quantity, so if you were to trade Plague of Locusts back, that's perfectly valid. I also think that getting Hello Dolly out of the way is a good thing because it means that you don't have to worry about some powerful cards. Tag Team is a card I was definitely worried about for Hello Dolly, and I was holding on to it unless I knew that Hello Dolly was out of the equation. The reason is because Hello Dolly copying Tag Team can create some crazy plays with Mythic Horse Sheep. If you do a C-Star, that could lead into another minion. If you do a Flock, that can trigger a Black Sheep, and both of those are moving over for at least 6 power. Certainly something unexpected. That's not something that I want to give out, just freely. Other than that, getting Hello Dolly out of the way is certainly good. And when I talked to Punisher about the reversal play, he did think about that. He thought he needed powerful setup, but at the same time, he can recur actions and Mythic Horse Sheep cannot. So if reversal gets out of the way, if Hello Dolly gets out of the way, that's perfectly fine because that's one of their best specials. The other special being Teaching Power, which generally means that it's a hard action to use. That's why I did a video on it. Usually you're winning or you have enough minions to make it close. And it could lead to a little bit of an overpayment situation, but it's still good. Regardless, I just love the combination of specials that the Lucha Egyptians bring against this combo. The last minute destruction, the burying specials, anything can happen. I can kill you, I can set you up, I can reversal you. Just imagine if you do have a decent amount of minion presence, if you were to bury quick setup or any of these setups that you use with Lost Knowledge, that you can reversal Starlight out of nowhere. That's incredibly powerful. Game 1 wasn't that close. Ancient Egyptian Luchadores were in control of it for most of the game. Game 2, significantly harder, mostly because of the bases. When you have a high breakpoint base, that makes On the Lam very powerful because it means that I'm putting on a lot of minions to try and break that base, only for them all to get moved to a ninja base. That was certainly, crazy and something that I was trying to watch out for, but it was going to happen if I couldn't break the base quickly enough, which I couldn't. Then you have Ice Castle coming out, which is terrible for the Lucha Egyptians because they have no movement, and it's perfect for the Sheep Horses because they have plenty of movement, including self-propelled movement. Well, Great White North happens to come out, which will give me presence on Ice Castle. The moral of the story is that bases really do provide a neutral assist. They were a huge advantage to Mythic Horse Sheep, but they also prevented an opportunity to take away a solo scoring, and he had to play around that for the rest of the game. It's what makes the game interesting and unpredictable in a lot of ways. As I said before, I am so happy that Lucha Egyptians are advancing. I like them on paper. They did a great job against Mythic Horse Sheep. They have an incredibly difficult task against Itty Critter Grims, although, as I mentioned yesterday, they haven't had the easiest time going into things, so who knows what can happen. Are my Dark Horse candidate going to knock out my actual candidate to win the tournament? It's going to be really hard to say, and it's a win-win, lose-lose situation for me. If Ancient Egyptian and Luchadors win, then I look like a genius because my Dark Horse candidate is in the Final Four. If they don't win, then Itty Critter Grims will be in the Final Four, and that's who I have winning everything. If they lose, though, I'm going to be incredibly disappointed because it means that, my the team that I absolutely love this team, and I don't want them to lose. But eventually, someone I care about is going to have to lose, and it looks like that's going to happen in round 3, game 1. I just don't know who it's going to be yet, and I'm eager to find out. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you tomorrow for game 19. Let's shut it down.